Hi, Brian James at Micro Four Thirds Guy once again, and in this video we're going to be finding out what happened to the 20-year-old film stock which I pulled out of my Olympus OM1N. Join me. Hi, Brian James at Micro Four Thirds Guy once again, and a few weeks ago, I don't know if you remember, I posted a video where I was looking back on my old Olympus OM1N, a camera that I've had pretty much near 50 years. And when I went to have a look at the camera, which I'd found in the garage and pulled out from storage, forgotten I even had it to tell you the truth, I found there was still a film in it. And I decided then I was going to try and take a couple of shots on it, but the film quickly ran out, so I managed to take one, maybe two shots on the film before I finished. And I promised you that I'd see what happened to that film when it came out. I didn't know when it was from, I didn't know how old it was. I guess it was probably about 15 years old, because I can't remember using the camera for the last 15 years. So I decided I was going to try and get those films developed. Now, keep on watching on this. If you like this channel, don't forget to subscribe down below and give me a big thumbs up to like, because that gets YouTube's algorithms to boost it so that more people can see these videos, which is really, really good. It means I can get the message of old school photography out to even more people. And if you can get the chance to drop me a little donation for a cup of coffee, you'll find a link below to PayPal. Anything you give me is appreciated. Oh, and don't forget, watch this video till the end, because there's a bonus viewing for you. There's extra material in here which I haven't told you about, which is going to knock your socks off in comparison to what I'm going to tell you now. So keep on watching till the end, really important. So I got them sent away. I put them into a local place to get them processed on the CD. Got my negatives here. Long time since I used negatives. Isn't it fascinating? These are the sort of things that you forget. And I went into the place and of course handed the filmers over, and she gave me a ticket, and I thought, hang on, I've forgotten all about these tickets. You need a ticket to get your film back, don't you? So I got my negatives, I got my disc. I wasn't totally sure which one to go for. You can get different resolutions, and because I didn't know what the state the film was going to be, I got them on a standard resolution as opposed to high res. It still cost me over £8 for the film to be done. It was going to be about 11 otherwise, but I decided I just got them on a standard, because really what I wanted to do was to see the quality. If the quality was good, I can always put the negatives back through and rescan them and get them scanned at a higher resolution, but I thought standard resolution was going to be great. And the standard res, when I've looked, is 1990 by 1329 pixels, so it's still not a bad resolution actually. It's about the same as I'm uploading photos onto Facebook and onto social media, and it's also the same resolution as I put the photos out for putting up onto this channel. So got me notes here. I'm going to have to keep on looking at my notes a little bit. So it was the OM1N video. Now, if you have a look, there's a link to that video up above. If you haven't seen it, I'd advise you go and have a look at it first, and then come back here, because that tells you the story of how we come to this film. But basically, I had a look, and I got the prints through. Well, I got the CDs through, and as I say, I thought it was about a 15-year-old film. It's actually a music event I'd forgotten all about. It's a music event from 2001. It's 20 years old. The film in there is 20 years old. So has it come out at all? Well, let's have a look. And at that particular time, I wasn't running photography as a business. In fact, I'd given up on photography pretty much altogether. It was one of those things where you lose your mojo, you lose your momentum, much as I did last year during the pandemic. And at this moment in time, I didn't really have any interest in photography, but I just took the camera along anyway. And I was chatting to a friend of mine who's actually one of the people featured in this, and he reminded me about the event. Basically, I'd said I would take some photos because I was known about being a photographer in the past, but I really didn't want to, so none of these got published, and I didn't really push there, which is why they've stayed in the camera. Now, I'll show you the first one. This is a building in Carlisle. Again, I don't know why I took them. This is actually right at the beginning of the reel though. And what I used to do, rather than just waste a shot, I always used to just take a shot of something when I put a new film in. because normally I'll put a film in, do 2 or 3 winds through until it gets to the counter, but I'd always actually point the camera at something as I was doing them. So this is the old HSBC bank, which is still there in Carlisle. And to tell you the truth, for a 20-year-old film, it's not too bad. What I've done is I've put these into Lightroom. The only thing I've done in Lightroom is just adjust ever so slightly the exposure, if the exposure was right, just to bring the exposure back in. And effectively what I did was hit the auto button. So nothing more than I'd been doing if it was any photo otherwise. So again, not bad detail. If we have a look at a certain amount of graininess on it, this was a 200 ASA film, but I think a 200 ASA film for 20 years old, I think we can expect a bit of graininess in it. And it is film grain rather than digital noise, which is it has a different atmosphere to it. Next one's more of a street level of the HSBC bank. Great. Seeing people there, it's not a great deal different to now, so you know, nothing special on that. No idea what who these two are, but basically I do think I know the trumpeter, to tell you the truth, but these were a couple of people busking outside House of Fraser. There was something of a greeny hue on these photographs, and this has been corrected. Just put a little bit of white balance onto this, but generally it's straight out the camera, and it's sharp enough. These are all sharp enough. So go through the photos again. If you look at the colour rendition actually on the trumpet, on the bell of the trumpet, it's quite vibrant. For something which has been sitting in the camera for 20 years, and let's face it, hasn't been the best of conditions, has been in a damp, cold garage, where you know it's not what you call central heated, and it certainly hasn't been humidity controlled. So I'm amazed that we got anything out of this at all. This really is quite stunning. That's my mate Andy, and this is a shot, just over the shoulder shot at the Maryport Blues Festival, and this was, as I say, in 2001. Now I performed on that stage myself, but also I watched some of the bands and did sound for some of the bands on the stage, and it was as we'll see on the next couple of shots, it's a converted double-decker bus which was used there as an outside stage. Again, not bad at all. It is grainy. But generally the whole thing's fairly reasonable. You know, they're not good photographs, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything of good photographs, but certainly insofar as detail, it's all on there. A couple of the girls singing outside. You can see towards the top, if we look at the top here, you can see that there's quite a bit of pinkish coming in, and I found this was pretty much across the board. There was a pinkish hue, especially in the top of the frames, and I'm guessing that's probably down to light leakage over the years, which doesn't surprise me at all. But again, lots of detail. If you look at the saxophone underneath the speaker column there, again the sort of the sheen on the sax comes through well. Someone else taking a photograph at the other side, no idea who that was, but there's a huge amount of detail in the background. When we're looking at the background at the buildings and the cars, there's a huge amount of detail there. Again, general sort of shots. You can see the bus. Now this, I'm presuming, was just using the standard 50mm f1.8 lens, and a good over-the-shoulder shot of from the bass player's point of view. And again, you've got that pinkish hue up the top. But as I say, for a 20-year-old film, which has been in the worst conditions possible, I'm totally amazed by this. Obviously, some of the photographs haven't come out so well. This one with the two girls singing close up, it's very frosted over, very, very poor. So, you know, we're not going to get this. But again, if this had been a new film, I think it would have been great. But the next shot, great, absolutely great. The colours are still there. The blacks are black, the whites are white. The colours are fairly vibrant, and there's certainly detail. If you look at the hair on the singer on the far side, the one with the white top on, where her hair's blowing up, there's so much detail in that. And again, as I say, this has been sat in a cold, damp, horrible garage for 20 years in a camera which hasn't been open for 20 years. I'm stunned. Shot looking out over the crowds there. Very much a bluish cast on this, but again, what do we expect on a film which has been sitting in the camera for so long? But even with that colour cast, it's still got a huge amount of detail and not too bad on the grain. That's quite a hard shot because there's an awful lot of dark there, an awful lot of shadow, and yet it's not silly grainy. Again, on this one with the music bus being seen from the outside, the grain is quite apparent on the bus itself, but again you've got that pinkish magenta hue sitting on the top right hand corner, and it seems to be coming in from that right hand side. So I'm convinced that this is a light leakage on this. Now, one of the funny things was getting these back. It's so long since I got films developed. I got back into the car, put them on the seat beside me on the journey home, and I suddenly was driving along and realised there was a strange odour in the car, and it's the chemicals, because of course you've actually got chemicals to develop the negatives there, and it was such an evocative smell because it's so long since I really smelled those smells from the developing chemicals, and it's one of those things that you never forget. I had a few moments sort of wondering about it, then all of a sudden it was a revelation came back, and it was all the memories came back when I used to do my own development and printing. Again, on these, lots of detail in the background. Even though it is a bit grainy, you can make out all the letters on the amplifiers, the high watt, the Laney, the Marshall, whatever it is on there. The detail on the car, on the rear lights, and even on the foot pedals on the stage, you can see quite a bit of detail on them. And again, just that one with the Music Links bus, that magenta coming in the top right hand corner. And as I said, the more I'm looking at these photos, the more I'm convinced that this is probably some form of light leakage. It's only at the top, and it tends to be on the right hand side of most of these. Now this is a shot I just took in a room. This was one of the ones that I shot on it. Now there's 20 years difference between the last shot on the bus and this one, and it was overexposed. This was partly because of the fact that we were trying to get sorted out with the battery, because the battery on the OM1N used to be a mercury battery. The new one isn't, and it puts out a slightly different voltage. So this was done with the metering on the new battery, but straight out of the camera, and it's overexposing by about a stop and a half to 2 stops. Then I went outside, and if you saw the last video, and again if you haven't seen the video, get on the link to it, but I managed to get one shot off on that, and that was to a folly which is just outside Carlisle. And again, with the 20 years difference, that magenta really has come in. This would have been the last shot in the film, and this film would have been sitting in the camera outside the canister for 20 years. So although it was inside the sealed body of the film, it didn't have the double protection of sitting inside the canister or the roll-up spool on the right hand side. And we can see there's a definite magenta hue across there, and there's been dirt and things got into the film. Those little marks up the top and above, they're actually on the negative rather than in the camera, and this is things which you'd expect if you've got small dust particles which have managed to get into the camera body and have settled on the film which has been sitting there. There's nothing you can do about it. But overall, it's quite interesting. Yes, it does have very much a magenta cast, but the greens themselves are really quite brilliant, and there is still a huge amount of detail in that. So, conclusions: 20-year-old film, absolutely fantastic. Usable? Well, I think it's quite surprising how usable that film's been. One thing it did tell me though is just how usable the camera had been in the first place, because if you remember, there's almost since I got that particular camera, there's been a damaged damaged mirror on it, and that caused focus problems. And somebody asked me a question about getting it fixed on the previous post, and to tell you the truth, it's not worth it. The cost to get that camera mirror replaced is actually a considerable amount more than you can buy a pristine OM1 on eBay. So it's easy just to buy a different camera. But also, I did find out with experience as to where the best part to focus on is, because with the mirror being cracked, it does actually affect how the focus, how the mirror image is put up onto the focal plane above it. So you've got to be a little bit savvy, and if you know where you're looking on that, then you can get a really sharp focus. And obviously I'd had that camera for a long time, so it just proved that you could. So in conclusion, yes, even if it's a 20-year-old film, there's a certain amount you can do, and I'm sure if I was to sit and spend a bit of time in Photoshop or in Lightroom, I could really improve those photos no end. I could get rid of a lot of the noise. I could certainly get rid of some of those colour hues on the top by putting filters on and changing some of the settings on it. But considering that they literally just had a little minor adjustment, just to hit the auto button just to get the exposure levels right, which is pretty much what I would be doing if I was printing them, because remember, these have come straight from the negatives to the CD. Normally, if I was printing a photograph, I'd be doing a certain amount of dodging and burning if I was putting them onto an enlarger and changing the way that the shots look anyway. And I've done nothing more than what I would have done on doing a paper print in Lightroom. In fact, considerably less than I would have been doing normally. So I said that I had a little bit of a bonus viewing. Well, yes, I did. I didn't just have one roll of film, I actually had 3 rolls of film. And there's another video coming out because I found a camera. I found a Pentax ME, and I don't know if I have it on me at the moment, but there's a video coming out in the Pentax ME. I found it, or rather my daughter found it, and we're desperate to find out who it belongs to. So there's a story on that. So I've shot off the film that was in there. I've done a small review on the camera, but I shot off the film that was in there, partly to find out if I can trace who it belongs to. So watch out for that, because if it's a person that you know, I really would like to reunite that person with their camera. It's a good camera, and it's obviously been put down by accident and left. But I said 3 rolls of film. I found a 12 exposure Fujifilm, again a 200 ASA film, and I didn't have a clue about it. That was sitting in the case, in the bottom of the case, when I found the camera. Now, as I say, the film and the camera I knew was at least 15 years old. As it happens, it's 20 years old. Well, this film must be older still, but I can't remember it. I couldn't remember it at all. So, as I said, you know, there's a bit of a bonus here, because I also put that in to be checked. And I was astounded what I found. Let's have a look. Let's have a look and see what I found. This is what I found. It's a tank from a Kawasaki KH250. And how do I know that? It's because it was my Kawasaki KH250 and I was restoring it. And I restored this Kawasaki KH250 in 1994, 93, 94, which makes this film 27 years old. So almost 30-year-old film. So if we thought we were going to see some results on the 20-year-old, what does a 27-year-old film look like? Well, the first one, not particularly terrific. Obviously, it's we can see then. This is pretty much what I would have expected from a very much age-expired film. And remember, the previous film had sat inside a light-sealed camera inside its cartridge. This one was just in its cartridge in the bottom of a bag. So even less humidity protection, even less heat protection, and certainly less light protection. So we would expect to see some poor results. So yes, fair enough on that one. It was enough to recognise it. And then I found this. Now that's considerably different. Again, we have that magenta hue, and the magenta hue on this one is pretty much across the board. It's on the top and bottom. But what I did is I put a little bit, I sampled the white and did some white balance on that. So the white lines, the white coach lines on the tank, I used Lightroom and just did a sample of that to try and get the white balance. And I'm stunned, absolutely stunned. It's anything but a good photograph and very, very grainy. But considering it's 27 years old, when this photograph was taken, there was no such thing as a digital camera. They didn't exist. They hadn't been invented at that time. Again, great magenta hue on that. And on that one, but there's lots of detail. We can see that it's there. And I'd been painting the tank and putting the coach lines on. So these were literally just a record. And I'd forgotten all about this. In fact, how I know that how old this is because I sold the bike in 1994. So it was restored, and this and another motorcycle was sold in 1994. So I think this is probably 1993, to tell you the truth. So that's 28 years old. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in onto the newspaper to find out the date, but it would be interesting to. And there's the bike. Again, a big amount of magenta hue at the top. Again, taking the white balance from that white line, and it's not right. We're not going to get it right because of the magenta hue, top and bottom. You can see it in the roadway there, and you can certainly see it on the houses. Those houses are whitewashed, and you can see on the white frames that it's very magenta. But in the centre, the car at the left-hand side is a white car, and it's coming out quite white. So it's very patchy. It's top and bottom, and again, I think it's got to be down to light leakage. The motorcycle itself, though, is pretty much accurate to what it was. And this was the time it was being rebuilt, just being put back together. And again from the other side, and again things like the chrome work looks pretty good. The highlights work well, the whole tank, and the white in the centre from the sheen of the sun is coming through pretty clean and white. But the detail is, again, the detail is fantastic on it. All the spokes are clearly able to be seen. The details on the engine, the engravings on the engine, the lettering on the wheels, all there. 27, 28 years old. If anybody knows where this bike is, by the way, I sold it in Carlisle. If ever you come across it, it's probably long gone, but if ever you do, let me know. I'd be really interested to find out its history since I sold it almost 30 years ago. Now this one, the magenta is incredibly strong. And again, this is a thing with films being left. Light doesn't just come in and evenly spread itself across. It depends how the light's been inside the cartridge, and whether there's been gaps, bigger gaps between the folds as it's been wrapped around itself or not. And obviously this had a bigger gap and allowed more light to go further down. And again, why I know the age of it, the VFR 750, the white VFR 750 FG, was my motorcycle as well, and again that went in early 1994. And again, a small amount of colour correction on this, best you can, but because it's not in one place, you've got different colour hues as we go across a shot. It's difficult to get anything back. We've corrected the magenta, but we've got very much a blue hue on this, especially on the chrome work on the wheels of the bikes and the lower half. But again, we're talking about a 27, 28-year-old film. So I found this quite fascinating to see. I hope you've enjoyed seeing these. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Give me a big thumbs up. And if you get the chance to put something on the PayPal link to buy a cup of coffee, I really appreciate that. I say cup of coffee because it goes on coffee, but it also goes on putting things like fuel into my van so that I can actually go out and do more shoots around the place. But I hope you've enjoyed this. This has encouraged me to do an awful lot more film photography again. And as I say, I've found the Olympus, but I've also got my hands on this Pentax ME. So until somebody claims it back, the right owner that is, until the right owner claims it back, then there's another camera for me to give a try to. Till the next time, this is Brian James saying enjoy your photography. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks now. Bye-bye.